so without further ado, I am very pleased to introduce our first speaker for our speaker series for the RU this summer. This is Jason Bennett. Jason is an Ursinus alum. He graduated with both a math and a physics degree in 2018, I believe. 19? 2019. Very wonderful student to have. He's precisely the kind of student that every professor wants to see in their class, always so excited, so chipper, as you will see here today. He's currently a graduate student in physics at Stony Brook, and he will, I don't, the title here, but he'll tell you about something. Without further ado, I'll give you Jason back.
Okay, yeah. And I just want to put out, I guess, one thing I'd like to say about the talk. It is recording on Zoom, so you will be able to see this screen sharing. I'll send it to Nick. You guys can, I'm sure, watch it many times over. And I also just wanted to, first, before I even do anything, ask if there are any questions about grad school, because you are obviously all like in the throes of applying to grad school and you're anxious about it and you don't know what's going on. So also you can ask questions at any time during this entire thing. And moreover, you can also email me literally all the time. I literally brought a mouse and keypad here because I'm such a nerd and stay by my computer all the time. So if you ever, how do I show my, yeah, oh, over here. So if you ever need any kind of grad school, applying to scholarships, like after I took kind of a gap year in between Ursinus and Stony Brook, I went to the Netherlands with the Fulbright scholarship, which I'll touch on at the end here, because I think if you're applying to grad school, it's really not a ton of more work to apply to the Fulbright or to the, there's things called the Gates Cambridge or the Rhodes Scholarship. It's very much the same as applying to grad school. So if you have any questions about what we talk about here today or anything like that, just shoot me an email and we can set up a Zoom call or anything like that. Any questions before we start off? Just things that are just standing out to you that, or like just anxieties in general about grad school? Yeah.
How's grad school?
It is good. It is much different than, well, I mean, it's not so much more different. It also depends on your background. So I would say my background was very, because I went to this college, and as you've experienced so far being here just for your short time, all the professors here are like best friends, and like they will like answer any of your questions, and you can literally hang out with Ori for 4 hours a day if you'd like, which I did many a time. And so in grad school, it's more independent, which is good. You know, research-wise, you're starting to become your own researcher, and you're just getting older, and it's nice to have independence and be able to decide what you're doing. So yeah, I like that. And it's a lot of work, but it's also pretty gratifying, because coming from such a small place, I knew I was going to struggle at a big place like Stony Brook, and I did, but I also passed all my courses, which quite frankly, I did not think I was going to. Like midway through the semester in each of the first year, the fall and the spring, I was quite scared that I wasn't going to pass the classes, but I did. And I don't know, I had other friends from similar smaller colleges who also felt that way. You'll find that many people feel that way, but none of us failed, and we were all onto our second year with fine grades. The other thing, now that I'm talking about grades, is that they really don't matter in grad school. If you pass, then it's perfect. Like you are doing the same amount of work. Like I worked as hard as I did at Ursinus now that I'm in grad school, but the grading is flexible, very much so. And so you're putting in the work at a very high level doesn't necessarily correlate to you getting a 100 on your homework, like it would have maybe at Ursinus or something like that. So grades are not important really in grad school. It's really just putting in the effort and learning and making sure that you know your stuff. Yeah.
Even if you're going to a master's program and still are applying to a PhD program?
Yes. So that's a little bit different. And in that sense, I think on one hand, grades matter even less because what I've been told from my friends who have successfully gone from master's to PhD is that you should not be spending your time with classes. You can take classes in your first or second year of your master, but to get from a master to a PhD, showing your research chops is actually a little bit more useful because the goal of a PhD is to produce original research. Doing some kind of, maybe so for instance, I took 3 required classes my fall semester. But 1, I wouldn't recommend that. But 2, even if you are a master's student, I would maybe take 1 required class, maybe 1 class that you like it's called maybe a breath course, something that is usually taken by older students, not older, but like second year. And then definitely only 2 courses, max 2, maybe just 1, and then fill the other 2 classes with research. Because if you're doing research, you are making a good impression, ideally, on the person you're doing research with, and then they can write an outstanding letter of recommendation for you for the PhD program. For instance, I'm very jealous of my friends right now who are master's students because they did that and they did they took the advice of those older graduate students who said focus on research, and they're like my friend just presented at a conference, and she's a master's student, and I'm like how come I can't do that? I'm here taking classes because I am in the PhD and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get kicked out yet. I can just focus on these classes and then do research. But because you're going into a master's program and then the PhD, having more research is the best way to boost your CV. Yeah. But of course, the caveat to that is only take that, maybe 1 class and then 1, less arduous class, and that's more surrounding your research area, but make sure that you do well in that class. In most graduate programs, a B is what you need to pass, and I got a B across every single class. And what, that was taking 3 of them at the same time, and so I'm very grateful that I got a B in all of them. But if you were just taking 1, it makes more sense that you would put more work in and get an A. So yeah, it's more important to just show that you're more of a researcher than a good test taker. Any other questions before we get started? Okay, so the way we should get started is talking about money, because applying to grad school is insanely expensive, insanely expensive. And so to show you, because I did not take the advice of one of my physics professors, which was ask for a fee waiver. Because the fee waiver, requesting it will not go to your department. You're not emailing the department secretary, you're not emailing the department chair or whatever. They can't give you a fee waiver. You're emailing the grad school, who rarely ever even speaks to your math department chair, anything like that. They don't know what classes you're taking. They barely even know that you're a student there. They're just taking your money. Well, I mean, depending on, either they're paying you or not for a, PhD versus a master. But reach out to them because they have very little influence over anything. They don't like nothing in your application has anything to do with a fee waiver. And I'll show you an example of what happens when you don't ask for fee waivers because it was astronomical. So here is my Excel sheet. I'll go into what all these columns mean as we go on, but I just want to show you that applying to, let's see, 2 through 24, that would be 23 schools, cost $2,600, which was insane. And I was, you know, a little bit fortunate to go to Ursinus where I didn't pay a ton. So I was like, you know what, I'm, you know, this is what I want to do in life. I need to, you know, spend some to make some. And I spent that amount of money, which is insane. Yes.
Is that just an application fee and such, or does that include your standardized?
Yeah, it includes the standardized test. One thing that I didn't realize when I was first applying, if you see here, I have 2 columns for the subject GRE, that's the physics GRE, or the math GRE in your case. I don't know if that's, is there a math subject test? Okay. You don't spend $27 each. You spend $27 and you send your regular GRE scores and your math GRE scores. So that does cut down, like this column doesn't even need to be here. You just spend $27 flat and you send all your scores. But if you take a look at these application fees, some of them are insane. And I guarantee this is 2-3 years ago. So I bet they're more. On the other hand, I don't know about regular GREs, but because of COVID, and even before COVID, this was starting to become a thing where schools were realizing how, you know, maybe this is a physics specific thing, but in physics anyway, they were starting to drop the GRE requirement for the physics subject test before COVID even happened. And now that COVID happened, they're definitely not requiring it. And moreover, they weren't even requiring the regular GRE this year anyway. I don't know if that's still going to be the case. Maybe some things will stick, you know.
Sorry, we just applied to grad
Mhm.
school, so we're a little, that was the same thing with the math subject test. And it was the same thing with COVID, it was completely dropped, you couldn't physically take it. And from what I've heard from a lot of my professors, it's the same thing, where like they might add it back, but a lot of people are thinking that most colleges probably are gonna add it back.
Yeah. So one thing I think might still be required just from a grad school standpoint is the regular GRE. So on one hand, you know, I thought the regular GRE was much like orders of magnitude much easier than the math subject or the physics subject test. The crappy part is you're paying the same amount whether you take 1 or 2. It's $27 regardless of how many tests you take. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If they, you know, say we recommend a subject test, you know, there are different things in wording. We'll see some of them as we. What I'm going to do later is to kind of walk you through how to find out what schools to apply to. I think that's the hardest part. But there's different languages. So if they say we recommend you send the GRE scores, you should send the GRE scores because unless you got like what I got on my physics subject test the first time around was a 3 percentile. So that means 97% of the people scored better than I did. So that one, even if they said recommended, I would not be sending. But for the most part, if you got anywhere over a 50 percentile on your subject test, send that. If it says is not required, it doesn't really matter if you send it or not. There are different wording between recommend, is not required. The strongest one, and what I think from like a financial and diversity standpoint that schools have been adopting much more frequently, at least on the physics side, is we do not require and we do not evaluate. So it's, you can send it, but they won't even look at it. So that's like a firm no. Yeah, there are a lot of students who, or maybe I'm not wording this correctly. it was something very strongly so that they don't even look at it in a good way or a bad way, but a lot of international students, that's a strong point for them. So I know that they still take it into account if you want it to be taken into account. I don't know, maybe we'll see it. Maybe we'll see it. So just to keep in mind, application fees are insane. So please, 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 please ask the grad school for fee waivers. If they say no, they said no. It's not going to affect you in any way, shape, or form. And what I will show you now, because I had a very unique opportunity to, well, you can call it an opportunity. I applied to grad school twice because I applied to grad school first to all these places. And then because of the deadlines of the Fulbright scholarship versus grad school, I heard that I applied to the Fulbright in September and then applied to grad school in December. But I wouldn't hear about either of them before I heard from grad school. So I heard that I won the Fulbright and then started to hear from grad school. I didn't do, I got into most of the safeties I had, but I didn't get into any of the reaches. So I took a chance and applied again the next year. And this year, I will show you an example of what my letter asking for a fee waiver looked like. But this year, this is the result of me asking for fee waivers. 0, 0, 0, 0. This one, UPenn was kind of stingy. 0, 0, 0, 0. And Stanford, to be fair, and Stanford. Yeah. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So, I mean, in total, I did still spend a few $100s, but it is much, much less than 2,600. So this was a result of me just sending an email. If you would like an example of what my letter looked like, I did go a bit too much on this one. For example, you do not need to show that your current bank statement is 0, which I did. If you would like to see, I was like, oh, look, my bank statement says $12. So please give me a fee waiver. What I did give them is a statement from my financial aid officer. I just reached out to my financial aid officer and said, can you tell them how much money you're giving me so that they know that I'm poor? And so this was just a statement that said that it will be, let's see, where is it? Based on paying the application fee would likely constitute a financial hardship for him. That's all that needs to be in the letter. And likewise, in my letter, I just explained my situation, that in my special situation, I had already applied and spent an insane amount of money. I talk about the school a little bit and why it's awesome. And then I say that I anticipate this being a serious financial hardship for me. And I just, attached this thing and just, a nice little thing at the end. I sent this exact thing to every single school, obviously changing the middle paragraph, which was already this was already in my, personal statement anyway. So it wasn't extra work in any way. And that worked for everyone but Stanford and Princeton, but it worked. And it was a very easy step that I wish I had taken the first time because I could have saved literally thousands of dollars. Okay, so now that we're done with finances, let's get into organizing, because the first thing you need to find out when you're applying to grad school is what schools to apply to. Because if we head over to this, which is kind of one of your best friends for applying to grad schools, you can see that there are 180 schools that either offer a master's or a PhD in math, which is an insane amount. You cannot apply to 180 schools, yeah.
This is just the ranking
Mhm.
provided by the.
It's a good list, though.
Yeah, but there are some other sites that also provide it. So, for example, the IMF website has a listing of that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, which is a good thing, because I need to get to the bottom anyway. There are schools that aren't even ranked. I think it stops at 120 or something. That's so funny. You know it already. Yeah, I would have said the same thing 2 years ago. I would have been like 34. If you can see on my other one, the rank was next to all the names so that I could psych myself out and be like, oh, you're never gonna get in there. Load more, come on. Yes, good point, because you can have that. I have physics. Yes. Which, if you're dead set on a master's, I highly recommend using this as well. France, Germany, what else? Some in Tokyo have insanely low tuition rates. In the state of Würzburg or something like that, southwest Germany, there is no tuition. That doesn't apply to you non-EU students, but it's still very low. And so I highly recommend, if you have your heart set on a master's before the PhD, to look there as well. It would be a very rewarding experience. Here we go, subject. Yep. Okay, so yeah, here we go, not ranked. Yeah, so it just extends until all the schools are there. But it's good that we did this, because scrolling to around here is what I recommend to start the safety schools at. We'll get there in a second. Where was I? Here. So here is a good list of things to put in your kind of Excel file as you're looking at the things. Obviously, just organizing the name of the university. For me, it was kind of important to either be close to family or at least be on the same coast, or be far away from our family. I was kind of enamored by the idea of going to the West Coast. I've never visited there. It'd be cool. The absolute most important category on this entire spreadsheet is the area of research you're most interested in. If I scroll over this thing over here, and then I bring this down, I see all this is a physics specific, but for math, it would be like the archive or like a Google Scholar profile for a specific professor that works there. And some little comments, like I sent them an email saying, hey, I'm interested in applying, ask a question, maybe say something nice, or ask a question maybe about the introduction to one of their papers. And then, some just things to help me organize, like which schools I'm applying to. Because if I email, Harvard, obviously, if none of them replied, that would have been normal because they're insanely busy. So it was kind of cool that they did reply. But for instance, a place like one of my safeties, which would have been University of Kentucky. If none of those people replied, I wouldn't apply there, because it's a safety school. So you, as you're starting and looking at like the lower ranked schools, you definitely want to have like a really good impression from the people that you're reaching out to, because by virtue of it being a safety school, it's usually a bit smaller, and you're going to have like ideally a really good relationship with the professor. So it would be nice to start it early and then get some good feedback from emails and stuff like that. Head back up to the top. Another very important thing that I ended up obsessing over way too much, so you'll see I just deleted all of it, was the cost of living in the area versus your TA stipend. So if you're a PhD student, you'll get, you ideally won't have to pay tuition, and you'll get a TA stipend. Just to give you an idea, the range that I've seen is $20,000 to, God, I think Stanford is like 35 just because of the area, Palo Alto. And then cost of living, I would just, look up something like, cost of living in Google. And then, you can compare it to something, where like for instance, that this is where I grew up in New Jersey, and I was like, okay, I know what it's like to survive on a given amount there. And then I would, use something like best places, like, this is for like family, like starting a family and stuff. You look into where to live and stuff like that, and then I would just rank it. This I got a little too OCD with, so I just didn't didn't bother with it, because I ended up comparing the cost of living and the money too much, when I'm like, I'm gonna be poor anyway. This is, you're not making a lot of money when you go to grad school, so I'm like, I shouldn't be, it's like a diminishing return if I'm analyzing that too much. And just for keeping things kind of like just keeping track of things. I actually made a whole separate spreadsheet for this as it went on, but the deadline, the special things about the application. So for instance, you need like 3 letters of recommendation, the online app. That was a weird one. This was Canada. It was like the application was due in the beginning of December, and then the essays and stuff like that weren't due for later. Yeah, online app, personal statement, stuff like that. So once you have, all your, like I said, this is definitely the most important. As you go down, you just keep track of, people, because in my like personal statement and stuff like that, I'll show you, for example, I can pull it up for you. Because I used a program like LaTeX, all I did was just change those professors. Like, I would do my first, like, because most of it's about you, right? So it's all about you, and then there's the, I don't know why I'm just talking about it. I can show you. So this is all the same, and then this field would be different for each school. So that's why here I'm keeping track of, oh, okay, this person is doing this kind of work. That's cool. Maybe I would link a particular paper that I thought was cool that I would like to work on, and then I write, maybe, let's see, maybe a sentence on each of the professors. Da, da, da. I guess a long sentence, but this guy was really cool, so I thought it would be nice to write a lot about him. But yeah, so this was, like 3 different professors in this one, and so this was the only section. Let's see, this was a particularly long one. One page. So about 2.5 pages of this personal statement was new for each of the universities, but it's an 8-page thing where all the rest is the same for every single thing. So all I did in this was just change, this part of the thing every single time, and I would just, write new things based on what I thought was cool about the person. Okay. Yeah. It depends. So let me, actually probably in my, so there are there are definitely let's see. I don't know why I wrote it in my notes all this time ago. No, it was a list of what each of them requires specifically. Yeah, so yes, yeah. and most of them do. You know, it's let me just, that there are so many notes in there that I'll get lost. But there are definitely, let's see, online questions, applications. Oh, what does it tell me? So yeah, so here you have a 4,000 character personal statement, a 4,000 character history. I don't remember what history was. And then like you're kind of like CV, you're 1,000 characters. Let's see here. Click on some other ones. But most of them, actually, there was no limit. So I took advantage of that. For better or worse, I mean, if you look at, where was the other one? 2020. That's still not a great track record. That's a lot of red. You know, I wasn't accepted to, you know, a lot of the reach schools, but they were, you know, a lot of reach schools. So who knows, maybe that that long of a personal statement isn't even a good idea. Let's see. Yeah, so most of them were no limit, and I have a very hard time limiting myself. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And trying to organize all of this. When did you start? How much time are you spending on it?
So my junior year summer, I did an REU for June and July, and all of August was this. Yep. So that was, and the reason for that was that I had an REU advisor who was keen to help me with this. And so if any of you are sophomores or anything and you know are looking to do another REU next year, those like obviously the letters of recommendation are amazing. But if you happen to go to an REU at somewhere that has like a math graduate program, that's obviously your safety choice. Because ideally you would make a good connection with whoever you're working with for that REU. And I can tell you from at least my experience, every single person who did the REU got into the grad program there. So by virtue of them having an REU and picking you for the REU and you know, recognizing what you did throughout the program, they already have so much more knowledge about you than other applicants. So that was a huge plus. Yeah.
Okay, this is an off-topic question, but something I'm so curious about. So when I was applying, one of the big things I was told was don't focus so much on the generalized ranking, but like focus on how well a school does in the specialty that you want to apply to. But I always found it difficult to figure out which schools were really good in the specialty that I wanted to apply to. So how do you find that?
So that's the tough thing. So in general, most of these US News rankings will only give you, so as you can see, they go down to like 140 for in general math. Let me copy this so I don't have to reload it. But they will give you a top 10 for specific specialties. It's not always accurate, and the best thing to do is to ask advisors. Ask Nick, ask Chris, ask Elena. They know what the hot shots in their particular field are. Go away, Adobe. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that is a huge, like, if you know that, not everyone knows that. So, you know, many people are applying to schools. Like, for instance, I've never been to Stanford. I don't know anyone at Stanford. I have, you know, that's not good. You know, University of Kentucky. If like out of nowhere, it's, you know, ranked 100. Who knows? Like why would someone apply there? And most people, the reason why these, you know, these schools are hard to get into is because they're, you know, ranked highly, and people think, oh, okay, let's apply there. So many people apply there. And so you're kind of missing out on like the hidden gems, like Chris says. So if you know something that, you know, Nick or Chris tells you, like, oh, there are nice people here, like definitely apply to that, because safety school doesn't mean not a good school. It means easier to get into. That's all it means. Yeah, because it doesn't matter the department. Like the most of the things about grad school, like the school, the department stuff, like the professors and classes and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter if you have a good advisor. So if you make a good connection, or you know that this person is good and you know works well with people, that's all you need.
So specifically, my top PhD school has one advisor that is like really, really good in my field. But apparently everybody in my field wants to work with him, so it's really, really hard to get him as an advisor. Do you have any recommendations of what you should do as a plan, if you should email them, if you should like how do you guarantee that you're gonna get that advisor that you want?
You can't. So it also depends on connections. If for some reason someone you know knows them, getting a letter of recommendation for that person really helps. I think the best strategy, like emailing and stuff like that, will only go so far. If you get into that PhD program, then that's where you can start to like really start to impress the person, because by the time you're in the PhD program, hopefully you'll be able to knock on someone's office door, you know, and not send an email anymore. So you can, you know, go to someone's office and ask them. I think the go-to for impressing professors you would like to work with is to read their papers, and come with specific questions. Don't, you know, just ask, like, hey, I'd like to work with you. Can you tell me stuff to do? Which is, I mean, that's what I want. Like that's mostly how I have approached people in the past, because I'm like, anything you do is cool. So can I just join you? So the more tried and true strategy is to show that you care about the material, not them. So like ask questions about what they're working on, a specific, maybe like a theorem, like why does this hold or something like that. Asking about their work will excite them much more than asking about them. Because yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's like the golden way to impress people, because you know, obviously doing that once won't, like, they're not going to email you right after that and be like, hey, you should work with me because you're awesome. But showing like that you care about this material and just getting familiar with them. Like if you just keep doing that, they're like, oh, this person already does this. And you know, when they actually either what will happen is either they are looking for someone eventually, or you become so familiar with them that you can just ask almost informally, like, do you have any projects maybe to work on? Yeah.
Another question I have. So one of the big things that I'm trying to stay aware of is like how the community is at the university. It's like it's a very competitive math, like PhD program within the program, or if it's very good community. And how do you figure that out? Because that was another thing that I really struggled with working on applying.
It's very hard without open houses. But I would just recommend emailing older PhD students. If there aren't any open houses, email older PhD students and how willing they are to talk to you, and how willing they are to talk about, like, openly and honestly about what the program's like, what you can expect, like struggling wise, what's good about the program and what's not so good about the program. So just the more people that reply to you, And you'll get a sense of the community just by talking with them. Obviously, Zoom is the best for like if you can't talk to them in person, because then they're not rehearsing an email. If you Zoom with someone, because of like I mean, if you look at, this ranking, there are a million schools, or this, I clicked on algebra, number theory, and algebraic geometry. This was about your question, like the specialties. In general, these do hold. You really don't get a ton of extra information from them, because for most cases, the all specialties ranking is almost the same as the specialties ranking because they're just good. In some cases, you do get like some special things. Let's see, I think it was, I was doing this last week just to prep. Was it analysis? One of them had I mean, Georgia Tech is pretty good anyway, but it is lower. Carnegie Mellon is in the general ranking like a 60. So this is like some extra information that you can get. Like, for instance, if you're interested in combinatorics and discrete math, then Carnegie Mellon is really high in the specialty and lower in the, so that's like a, what's the word? Like a good buy, or, like a used car or something. Yeah, all these are pretty highly ranked anyway. I could have sworn I saw one that was like, really? Oh, well. Yeah, those are all pretty good. Exactly. Yeah. 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 So, and so that's why, so now that, I mean, that's a good segue into, let's look at some safety schools. So let's just start. I think a 100 is a good place to start. Based on my experience, I got into all the 100s I applied for, like around this area. There are definitely caveats. There's reasons why it might be harder. Like Chris says, if for instance, for some reason, maybe 1 year, every single application is like, I want to work with this guy at SUNY. That's the only guy I want to work with, and they get 20 of the, or 10 of those applications for 2 spots. That would be weird. But in general, people aren't, it's weird to say, but a lot of people just apply to, they just go to the top 20 and they apply to all of them. Like a lot of people don't look into who the professors are at these places. So doing that will set you apart a ton. And knowing like, why do you even want to go there? Many people just, they applied randomly to the top programs, and because they're the top programs, if they get into one of them, there's going to be someone there cool. I mean, it's a weird strategy, but knowing who the people are, like for instance, Chris was saying that there's like an amazing person at this place, or Albany, you said, yeah. But like knowing that and talking about that in your personal statement, and if no one else talks about that, you're a shoo-in. Like you're easily going to get in because you know how valuable that school is because of that person. So let's just randomly click on one of these. And the weird thing is, and you'll probably experience it in when you are choosing maybe between different schools. George Washington University and Lehigh, in like the grand scheme of things, people are like, oh my God, such great schools. And then you say, I don't know, University of Iowa, and then people are like, what? Why do you want to go there? Like those other schools are so nice. That will happen all the time. So like, don't get sidetracked by that. But on the other hand, if you do care about that, then you're like, oh, cool, George Washington, that's a really good school. Like, but it's only 100. Oh, cool. I'll apply to all the hundreds that look cool. So let's just click on one of them. Actually, I don't need to click on it. I'm just gonna Google it. And I'm gonna show you how to find good safety schools, like kind of like hidden gems. Ah, it reloaded. Damn it. Okay, anyway. George Washington Uni map. Don't judge me. I wasn't even looking and it worked. So da, da, da. This is also a nice resource. If, for instance, people graduated recently with the person you want to work with, that's a really cool person to reach out to, asking what it's like to work with them. And another piece of information this gives you is that person now has one less graduate. So maybe maybe they are looking for more applicants now. That's really helpful. Yeah. If every single person, like if you, for instance, if your goal is to go into academia and every single person went into data science, you'd be like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the right one. This in general just gives you information about the structure of the program, the qualifying exams, which in general, I failed all of mine. So just during your first year, don't be, let's see. Yes, exactly. You have 4 total opportunities to take these. Don't stress too much when you fail them the first time, because you will. I know one person who didn't fail them the first time. So here's the huge, so like that, the PhD program, the website is okay. Most, unless it's a, super progressive program and like has some cool things, you might, that might stand out and make it a cool thing. Usually this doesn't have a ton of information for you. What does have a ton of information is the research tab, which will, in general, sort it by the area that you're looking in. So analysis, applied math, combinatorics, computational biology, logic, topology, dun, 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 dun. So let's just pick randomly some person. One way to know who the active people in here, remember we saw that past former PhD students. Seeing names here of the people that you are looking at is good because that means they are continually producing grad students and they are still advising people. The type of people that you would like to avoid are ones, as we'll see, maybe in the last decade don't have anything on the archive. Maybe in particular, this term right here, emeritus, means that they are not teaching, they aren't advising people. I don't exactly know what an emeritus does. I think it's just a way for universities not to hire new people, in my opinion. I don't really know what it does, but it's not someone you want to pick as your potential PhD advisor. So let's just randomly pick, we saw this name, so he put out a PhD student in the last 2 years. So let's check his archive to see what kind of stuff he does and just make sure in general that he's still doing stuff. That's true. But in general, when you're starting, if you have no idea what schools you're applying to, like me, like I had the RU place, and then I was like, I don't know, like there were spots to fill, and I had no idea what to apply to. Especially when you're starting, be super critical. If it's impossible for you to find any information on their website, if every single person you search on the archive, like there's nothing there, just move on to the next school. Don't dig deeper, just move on. Like, especially when you're doing safety schools and even top schools. If you, like in general, the top schools have better organized websites. It's easier to find the people. Another super helpful one is called Google Scholar. I'm not sure if that's common in math. or if that's more of a physics thing. Oh, that's right. I don't have an account for that. I think you sent it to me once. Okay. But yeah, so just a quick archive search. Archive is definitely the best of all of them. I mean, everyone uses the archive pretty much. Is obviously that this person is active. They literally have 2 publications in the last year, so that's really good. 3, almost 4. So yeah, this person is definitely super active. One thing you can do is just search their name, and you'll get some more information on like exactly like a homepage like this. Oh, right. Okay, so this is a good point. In general, someone with a Wikipedia page will be very hard to get as an advisor. But if you remember, this was a ranked 100 school. So if you're into knot theory and topology, this is a huge thing because regardless of what I was going to mention with the Wikipedia article, I thought he was going to be older because in general, people with Wikipedia articles are like 70. Age isn't necessarily an issue. It's just regarding tenure. So something I experienced in the first year was that reaching out to people who don't have tenure yet is super enticing because they don't have tenure. And so they're producing and producing and like they want to do more stuff. So they had 5 papers on the archive last month. Like it's insane. They're doing so much. And so it's very enticing to want to work with them because they're up and coming and stuff like that. One, they may not get tenure, regardless of how like good their archive looks. And 2, because they don't have tenure yet, all their livelihood depends on getting it. And so they're probably not going to want to advise people who take a lot of time. That's just my experience. It might, and also this depends on the university. So in general, these top 100 schools are smaller and they care more about that. So for instance, at my school, which to me is kind of sad, a professor can get tenure without being a good teacher or advisor. If they're putting out papers and being really good in the community and being at the forefront of research, they get tenure. It's sad, but it's true. At smaller universities, their teaching and their advising is more important in their tenure review, which I think is a really good thing. And so if that is the case, then them not having tenure isn't a bad thing because then they are eager to advise. And if they go to their tenure review and say, my students are almost going to graduate with their PhD, like that's a huge plus in their case. But if it's a place like Stony Brook is my example, or Rutgers, people without tenure have very, very little time at big places like that because they're literally fighting for like their career. So they don't have a ton of time to advise people other than like older students who are ready to just work with them. But on the other hand, so someone who just got tenure at a university like that would be pretty cool to work with because then they have a little bit of time to kind of slow down and start advising students. On the other hand, if this guy was maybe 10 years older and didn't, his archive is insane. But if he didn't have an insane archive and was maybe like 70 or even 80, maybe that's not the best person to ask either. Because unfortunately, and this happens to quite a few people, it's happened to 2 of my friends in the last 5 years, advisors die. It's sad and dramatic, but it happens, and it's something to watch out for. And in general, people, as they get older, are less at the forefront of research. So you want to balance someone who has time to advise you, who is also at the forefront kind of research. Yeah. In my 2 cases, they went to a collaborators university. So there was a very close collaborator and they just, there's a lot of leeway in academia in that sense. Like when someone dies, they're like, okay, whatever you need to do, we'll help you. The other case was that they just finished on their own because it was a very theoretical physics person, and they were, I think, in their 4th year, so they were going to graduate in the next year or two anyway. So they just finished up with the other younger grad students, and but it's not super common, but also just be aware of it. So obviously this was a huge, if you're a knot theory topology person, this is, this is an example of a hidden gem that we just found randomly by going to the 100s on the thing, looking at specific research. So we just went to the research page of the university. We saw, and in general, this takes a lot of time, right? Because what we didn't do was copy and paste all those names, because all these people might be awesome too. So you don't know. It also helps that you're here right now, because being here right now, regardless of if you like the work that you're doing or if you don't like the work that you're doing, because if you like it, awesome. Now you know, okay, now I'm just going to look at these 3. Like maybe you like combinatorics and graph theory now, and you like it because you did this thing at Ursinus, or you didn't like the work that you did at Ursinus, and then you're like, okay, I know I definitely don't want to look at these applied math people because I didn't like that. Yeah. It didn't. It didn't really affect me at all. I think if anything, it affected me positively because I was able to do more independent studies. I was able to actually like have my name on a publication and stuff like that, as opposed to like people where they go to like, if I went to Stony Brook as an undergrad, I would have been miserable because like there are grad students there who take all the opportunities. I went somewhere where there weren't grad students, and it was a much more close knit and like fostered like my independence place. So the only difference is that like I hadn't taken grad courses. So there are people, especially students who come from international universities, because in the international world, college isn't as expensive as it is in the United States. So many people just keep going and they get a master's because it's the same price. Like and if your yearly thing in the Netherlands is 2 years, like your yearly tuition is 2 years. I'm sorry. If your yearly tuition is 2,000 euros, and your master's tuition is 2,000 euros, you just might as well just get the master's. So many people can come in and not take the grad courses, like have them waived and just take the qualifying exams and like do well or take them again and stuff like that. That's the only downside, that like I didn't take grad courses. But it's not like most of the people are taking the grad courses. It's more common to be in a cohort of all the first years taking the grad classes. So yeah, I think many more pros than cons. And honestly, the same procedure that we just did applies for the top schools. Because these are the top schools, if you find anything weird, like if there are, say you just pick Columbia and you're, let's just pick something. Let's say, I'm gonna play devil's advocate and find something that Columbia is bad at. And also location. If you're not a city person, don't apply to Columbia. This is a nice one. Recent doctoral theses, because they will be much more pedagogic than anything your potential advisor writes. If that's, research. Recent doctoral theses are the best to read because they well, let's just click on an example. Usually you can download it. Oh, it's brand new, so you can't see it yet. Let's go back to Jesus. They have that many PhDs. Yeah, here we go. So the introduction of a thesis will be, oh well, this one's kind of short. Usually it's like the introduction to theses are like anywhere from 10 to 20 pages, which will like be much more comprehensible to you than the introduction to a research paper. The introduction to a research paper, usually for me, the best thing I get from it is references, because then you can go to like the 1970s paper, which was a little bit easier to read than the what they're doing now, which is way ahead. And it also, of course, they thank your advisor and stuff like that. The introduction will also give really nice introductions. So for instance, let's see. So this is a very general sentence, and then it says, for an overview. So this paper will in general be, I mean, it seems pretty specific. Let's see. Usually introductions to theses will include like, what is the word on the review papers. So review papers are in general much easier to understand than research papers because they don't do anything new. They review old stuff and usually explain it in a better way. Yes, so anything that starts in the past 20 years is usually a better paper to read that you'll be able to understand because I mean, I wouldn't understand it, but it's like easier. They're not trying to push the boundaries of human knowledge. They're summarizing past human knowledge. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And nowadays, people write the introduction and then the chapters are just papers they wrote. Yeah, it's like dissertation by publication. Yeah. So yeah, the latter parts of theses are pretty creepy. Yeah, like chapter 1, like 2-page introduction, then a paper. So that 2-page introduction is super valuable. Okay, research. I mean, so just off the bat, one of the things we didn't see, no logic. So if you really like logic, Columbia is not a top choice. Look at that, no logic. Losers. So clearly, yeah, if you're a logic person, then that, where'd it go? Oh, damn it. Right? Number 7, my ass. That is not a number 7. If you like logic, Columbia is a 100. So that's just ways to just quickly go through things. If you, by virtue of being here during this REU, or maybe other ones and stuff like that, either what you like or what you don't like. And so if something, if you go over here, they don't really, like for instance, the other one, that George Washington one, there was like 4 people in one category, 3 people in another, 4 people, and then it was like 1 person in this field. It's not maybe the best in that field versus where more professors in a given field is in general they're stronger in that, because then you can have more collaboration between the advisors, and also like if each of them have 2 grad students, then you can have a friend group of 8 people all doing topology or whatever. And they share them, right? Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, the same thing goes for safeties and top choices. especially on the first pass, be super critical. If something doesn't stand out to you and make you excited, just go on to the next one. There are 180 of them. Just keep going and find something that makes, like the research makes you excited. It checks all the boxes. Location is nice. There are, several professors that you think you would like to work with. And, maybe reach out to them and send them an email, and, you get emails from all of them, then put it on the list. In terms of numbers, it definitely depends on the fee waivers. So I think starting with that is a very good place to start. Or I guess maybe make a list of, like, I don't know, as much time as you have. Maybe you make a list of 20 schools and you get a fee waiver to 15. Awesome. It depends on your financial situation. Maybe you end up applying to 25 and you only pay for 10, or you can just apply to 15 and not pay for any of them. In general, one thing that I don't remember who pointed it out. It was either Nick or Tom. My initial Excel sheet was like 70% safety schools and 30% reach schools, which is not what you want. It's called a safety school because it's easier to get into. So you will likely get into your safety schools. Obviously, if you end up next year maybe doing an REU at a somewhere with a grad school, you're probably going to get in there. For instance, if you do, I say a good number is like 25%, 75%. So like 25% safety schools. Because the thing is, you only need to get into one. So as long as you have one thing on a safety school that's like, oh, okay, I'm probably gonna get in here. Maybe like you reached out and the advisor was like, oh my God, apply here. Like, you're gonna get in there. So as long as you have one thing on your, that you're going to get into, shoot for the stars, because it's kind of a crapshoot, and like there's a lot of random chance and like qualifications are viewed wildly differently on different admission committees, and so it's there's a lot of chance that goes into getting into places. So I would definitely recommend keeping it to like, but I mean that's what I did. I did 75% and 25%. So like I applied to like, I don't know how to do math. I don't know, 5 safety schools and 20 reach schools, and got it, like, I mean, on the second try, and this might have been influenced by the fact that I already paid $2,000 last year, and they were like, oh shit, don't do that again. So maybe that's why they were so nice, but also like I am confident that they would have been nice the first time around too, because I talked to a lot of people who that worked with. So as long as you have reason to ask, they'll probably give it to you. Yeah.
Another specific question. Sorry, I have something weird.
No, go for it.
So the research I did for my senior project was like very specific and very different than what I'm doing here. If say I'm looking at a grad school and I want to go there for number theory, but I noticed that they have somebody who does research on not very specifically positive traits, which was exactly what I did my undergraduate senior practicum. Would it be deceptive to talk about like, oh, I think it would be really cool to work with this professor? Which, like, it would be cool, and like that's something I'm considering, but I'm more considering the not theories.
No, just mention both.
The number theories.
Just both.
Okay.
Because all research is good research.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it would be deceptive to say like, I want to come here and work with this guy, and don't mention anyone else, and then work with like, well, actually, no, that's not true. What's the word I'm looking for? It would be, all right. What am I trying to say? No, I don't think it would be deceptive at all, like ever.
Unless you intend to not work with this person, if you say, I don't work with you.
Yeah, so
Yes, at that point in time, that you have-
especially if there's communication, like if you say I would love to work with this person, and then at like the, I don't know, and then like they email you or something, and then you're like, oh cool, and then like you get in, and you're like, I hate you. Like, don't do that. But also don't feel like if you say, like, even if you mention both of those things and you get in, especially at a bigger program, don't like be like, oh, I have to do this now. Like, especially at bigger programs, you just go wherever. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're until you are a PhD candidate, you can do whatever you want. So the first 2 years, you have a lot of time. Yeah.
So how good of a reason do you need to ask for the fee waiver? Can it just literally be that you're applying to a lot of
Yep.
grad schools?
Yep. I mean, don't say that. Say it's going to be a financial hardship for me.
Do you have to prove it?
No.
Just throw it out there. It's gonna be difficult.
Yep.
for you to,
Because it is. It doesn't matter if you have 50 grand in your bank account versus my $12. It's still going to be, I mean, it's still a significant amount of money. So I think it's a bit unethical. Like maybe like if you are struggling in any way, shape or form, then ask for it. But you know, if your mom is a hedge fund manager, maybe don't ask for it. Like you probably are okay. But yeah, there's no downside to asking for a fee waiver because if they say no, they say no. It's not going to affect you in any way. Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Let's see, what else do I have? This one, I think, so these are just some like when you go to the open house, like things to ask some of the grad students. A lot of these were just brainstorming things I had, but now that I'm actually a grad student, I kind of wanted to highlight some of the ones that I thought were actually important. These are pretty much the same thing, but like, how did like asking them how they met their advisor and started working with them is pretty helpful. If they say, oh, I took their class and did well in it, like that, I mean, that's a weird way to get an advisor, but like, you know, maybe that's what works for that. And that the last person also did that. Like that's just a what's the word? Like a special quirk about that like advisor. Or, you know, usually maybe they'll say like, oh, I went and asked them about their recent papers and like they were impressed. And that, like that would be the standard thing. Or like, you know, I did a reading project with them instead of taking a course one semester, and they, you know, just asked me to stay on or something like that. So learning how that particular advisor works is particularly helpful. What else did I highlight here? I was pretty curious what people do over the summer. Like, is it guaranteed that you get a summer TA position? Because it's in general not guaranteed. Some places, like at bigger places, literally need you. So it's like guaranteed that you'll have a TA position. And this kind of gets to what you were asking before about like the competitiveness. Just learning about like how desirable an advisor is. If they say like, if you mention who you want to work with and they go like, oh, of course, like that's probably like a sign that it's going to be hard to make it. It's not necessarily like I had the impression that it was going to be like cutthroat and competitive. Like at least in my experience, it's not like the students are competitive with each other. It's just more that like the advisor is like, you know, pretentious and like only wants the best of the. It's not like that's what I was really worried about going to a big spot. Like I thought it was everyone was going to be like not helping each other on homework and being like oh, I don't know what I'm working on. It's a secret. That's literally what I thought it was going to be, but it's not. And then just asking them like candidly about like what they struggled with, just so that you know what to expect. Like that'll help you get like, don't take anything with that professor or whatever. Mhm. This one is something that I was and still am insanely worried about. And it will give you an idea of what the program is like. Like from afar, my program looked like this happened all the time, but in reality, it really doesn't. Like what I've been told, at least from like the grad director and the older grad students, and is like the only way that you get kicked out is if you disappear. Like it like the only cases in the last like 5 years of this program kicking people out, which is like a big, course heavy, qualifying exam heavy place, was like a PhD candidate would like just ignore their advisor for like weeks and months, and like they were just like, okay, I can't pay you anymore. Like you need to like leave. That was the only case. Like in like it was just kind of grounding for me, because I was like, wait, people don't like just fail the quals and get kicked out? Because like I literally thought like that was how it worked, and they make it seem, when you read the websites, they make it seem like that's what happens, but at least in practice, it rarely happens. So that was like a huge like weight off my shoulders. I mean, it's still a weight on my shoulders, but I try to believe the older grad students who keep telling me like, no, you're not going to get kicked out. Trust me. Um, either they'll just pass you on your last and final attempt at the quals, or like they'll give you a special interview, or like do a special oral exam instead of your research oral exam and stuff like that. Another thing, I highly recommend it. I guess this depends on the university, but in general, on-campus housing for grad students is insanely expensive. So asking about what the surrounding neighborhoods are like, this in general, you don't really need to ask the grad students. I mean, you can, it's less work if you just ask them on the open house day, but you can go on Facebook and go into the groups, like Facebook groups, and then type in Stony Brook graduate housing. Like, just randomly, whatever the university is and graduate housing, there's definitely going to be a group. And it's like thousands of students who just post when a room in their house opens. Because it's much, much, much more feasible when you're making 20 grand a year to rent a room in a house instead of like an apartment. Only the ballers get apartments in grad school. If you, for instance, are particularly focused on something like this isn't, this could also be the gym. Like I was, particularly, I cared about like how good the gym was at the place, or if there were like local gyms that were better or something like that. So just particular things for you that actually do matter. Like in theory, you could be spending the next 4 to 7 years there. Like it's like a significant commitment. So make sure like you like the area and stuff like that. So ask specific questions. Um, I didn't actually end up asking any of these to the potential advisors. But let's see, why do I think these? I think like, yes, I wrote that these are for potential advisors, but I ended up asking their grad students. So like I figured out who was working with who, and then I asked them like, how are they? Like, do they actually only care about research? Do they like at Ursinus, one of the nice things that I liked about like advisors was like they talked to me about applying to stuff, and like they talked to me about my career and like life in general. So like I was looking for that. And also, how available are they? The more famous the person, the less time they have. Um, not generally, but in some cases, they are working on different things. They, have less time. So I just, wanted to. I was very focused on like a hands-on advisor is someone I would like versus like a hands-off, which some people prefer. Like they would like to work on their own and just get guidance from time to time. Whereas I'm like, like some people say micromanage and it's like a negative. I'm like, no, no, no. I want a micromanager. Mhm. This is just copy and paste stuff off the internet that I found that I thought was helpful to ask, but it's actually not. This one, like a variation of this could be like, how many grad students do they have? If they have, for the last like 20 years, if they've always had 5 grad students and they currently have 5 grad students, they're probably not going to take on another. Like it's a funding issue. Or, you know, if this is kind of related to that recent thesis comment too, if they have always had 5 grad students and right now they have 3 because 2 of them just, you know, left, that's cool. Good for you. This is probably a nice one to ask actually potential advisors. Usually people don't share grants with like random strangers, but you know, maybe they would. Or like, you know, when they and the reason I mentioned grants is because that's definitely like future looking. So like, yes, reading someone's recent archive work is helpful and like it gives you an idea of what they like. But asking them what they're thinking about doing in the future is also kind of cool, because if they're just thinking about it and they're not actively working on it, that's totally something that you could step up and do with them, because they're just thinking about it. They don't have someone like to work on with it. So that's something I should have highlighted that one. Yeah, it's just generic, blah, blah. Let's see, what am I missing? Okay, this is all from the Excel. This is also my website if you would like to read. It's not full of stuff. I used to be better about writing advice and stuff on it. Although, actually, now that I think about it, if you are studying for the GRE, I have some old, like some of my favorite comics, obviously. Finding like what books to use. And again, financially, I highly recommend you don't buy these because they're insanely expensive. Just get them from a library, because they do exist at libraries. I got them from this library. So, and like, don't pay them. Or find someone who is more wealthy and actually bought them, and because they don't use them anymore. They like, people just buy them and they study for a year and then they just sit in the closet. Free practice exams is the go-to. Taking the exams multiple times is just the best way to study for it. There are free ones through the official one. There's a free one with Manhattan Prep, and then you can, I think, pay for them for like 10 from the ETS website, something like that. Obviously, the official stuff is the best stuff to use. This is also the easiest to find. Like, you can find these in pretty much every library. The best for the math, the qual section or comp section, Manhattan Prep is like the best. They're awful for the English section, but whoever wrote these books are very good for the math section. And honestly, they're kind of fun. Like learning to do math much quicker. And for the verbal question, I didn't actually do any extra studying. All I did was, by taking the practice exams in like a book like this, or like the free ones like this, I just wrote down every word that I didn't know like during the practice exams and put them in a Quizlet. Like, that's the only way I studied. And you can use my big vocab set if you'd like. And then the writing section, similarly, they publish all their possible prompts. Like I mean, there are like 400 of them, but just doing that, like, that's the only way I prepped. I just copied, I went to their official site, and which this actually organizes much better. This website called Prep Scholar, they organize it by like topic. Like, so there's like ones where it's like, let's see here, agree or disagree with the statement, and then they like organize everything that's similar to that. And that's it. Okay. Um, mhm. You guys are already doing that. Okay. Let's see. Am I missing anything? List of researchers, most important one. Deadline, components of the application, like the, you have to send the paper. Mostly, like I only had one that actually required you to mail a transcript. Usually it's like after you get accepted there, then you can mail the actual transcript. But one of them, for some reason, required it before. Da, 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 da. And this is kind of like for after you apply, like once, or I guess after you're accepted, like maybe you get accepted into two places, like how do you compare them? Then it's more like you start to look at like the funding of the particular people, like, oh, they have 5 grad students and they've always had 5 grad students and they're all young. Like that means like for the next at least 4 years, they're probably not going to want to take anyone on. Money things like this is where I actually did start to look at like the cost of living in a particular area. Do you get stipend and benefits for 12 months versus 9? Do all the people go into data science after, or some of them in academia, or are all of them adjuncts for the rest of their lives? Are they happy? Like, are the grad students happy? But honestly, like, obviously, you don't walk up to someone and ask, "Are you happy?" The easiest way to like figure it out is like, obviously, if it's in person, it's much easier because then there's free food. And like, if there's free food in a graduate community, like everyone shows up. So like, are they happy to just like come around or are they all just coming in and like grabbing the pizza and running away? Like that's not a good sign. They probably just are depressed. This is a tough one to ask. Because it's a very stressful question I imagine, for like a 6th-year PhD to keep getting asked, like, when are you going to finish? But in general, like maybe asking the younger students, it's a less stressful question for them. Like, how long are people usually here? That's important. Like, if the average time to completion is like 8 years, that's probably a weird program. Might be a red flag. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. And that's a good sign because then they actually care about it. And I just wanted to leave you with some stuff about like Fulbright and like the Gates Cambridge scholarships like that. Because if you've done like the application to grad school stuff, like it's not much more. And this, you've literally already done step 1. It's obviously easier to apply to something like this if you did like this RU and you loved it. If you didn't love it, it's a bit harder because you don't have like that passion about a specific topic. So it's hard to write like a full application about it. But if you got lucky and found something that you love on your first try, then this is like a perfect thing to apply to. Same, basically the same step. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, like once you're looking into grad schools, it's super easy to like jump to finding something like this, where in this situation, it's much harder to figure out where to look. The easiest way to do this, and when I say this, when you apply to a scholarship like the Fulbright, you can't just apply to it generally. You have to apply very specifically. So you have to pick the country, who you're working with, and what you're doing. So the way you find that out is country first. So for example, my RU advisor, I told her I wanted to apply to this, and she was like, by virtue of being an academic, they know where in the world good stuff is happening. And she was like, I came to her and I said, oh, look at all these cool countries. They're doing cool stuff. And she knew like, oh, no, that this country is doing like, it has this university. It's like a huge powerhouse in the field, and you'll figure out what is a good country. And then you can play the statistics game by going here, and you'll find what the the acceptance rate of the region is. If, for instance, you only want to go to the UK, this is a super hard thing to apply to. It's like a 0% 2 chance to accept. So like it's a huge diminishing return to actually apply for it. If you only wanted to go to the UK or Australia or something. But there are a ton of countries, mostly Europe and Asia, some South American countries. But most of them, like, even though they, their official language isn't English, many countries have 90% fluency in English. So like looking through like for needles in the haystack where, for instance, I applied to the Netherlands, which the UK acceptance rate was like a fraction of a percentage. The Netherlands was 20%, which is huge. Like that's 1 in 5 people who apply for it get it. And it just so happened that the area that I worked on in physics was a huge powerhouse in the Netherlands. So I kind of matched those two things. And after I did that, I just went to what Nick was saying with global. And then I filled in country. What is that? Go away. And then you get a specific ranking for the country instead of just the US. And then what I did was, because, I mean, it was also helpful because the Netherlands is quite small. There are only like 7 universities. I was able to just do the same steps that we already did. I knew I liked this field. I went on their research tab on their physics department. I said, okay, here are 5 people doing stuff. And I sent them what's called a cold email. Let me try to find an example of a cold email for you. It's years ago, so it's not even on my current. Oh, it's probably not there. Yeah. Nope. 98% fluency in English, which was actually hard because like I wanted to learn Dutch, but every time I would struggle with it, they'd be like, just speak English. Yeah. Unless you're, I mean, it also depends based on like us being math and physics people. Academia is very English dominant at this point in like 2021. It's all English. Yeah. If your Fulbright is on like agriculture and you're in like a rural area, maybe you need to learn Dutch because they don't like speak English out in the boondocks or whatever. But yeah, let me try to find an example. Yeah. Even Poland, like Krakow. Yeah. I'm trying to find an example. Because I definitely didn't use this email address when I was emailing people. In Poland? Yeah. Apparently not. What do you mean? Wow. Okay. That's insane.
I had a funny story because I speak Polish, so I kind of figured like Russian might not be super. I realized I can't read Cyrillic because I went to pictures of them, so I ended up taking them in But yeah, so I don't think it's how I don't know what
No. Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah.
I actually put my house over here it was actually kind of funny that the guy running the exam took a Wikipedia article. I'm not going to
Nice. So the USB drive with my old email account is at home, so I will email Chris that to give you guys an idea of what a cold email is. But after reaching out to all those people with those like cold open emails, one of them will reply, and once you do that, it's like you're pretty much done. All you have to do is like write about in general what you want to do, and you basically have a personal statement that's just like what you did with a grad school. So it's very like there's not a lot more. Yeah. So there are different types of Fulbrights. There's teaching English, like there's no academics, it's just you teach English abroad. A master's degree, so you can get a master's. I was intimidated by that. I didn't know how to apply for it. I thought it would be very competitive, but apparently it's not. It's just as competitive as the one I did, and the one I did is research. So it's not a degree. At the place that I went, they didn't care. They were just like, you can take classes if you want. So I was literally not a student, and they just let me just sit in classes. Like I was like, oh, cool. Like, so yeah. Before, very much before. So like, I think it's like, I can't remember if it's September or October. I think it's October. Yeah, October 12th. And it's like insanely stretched out. Like, I mean, you'd think grad school is, but it's like, the grad school is like December, and then you start to hear in like March maybe. But like Fulbright is like October, and you start to hear in like March. Yeah. Mhm. I would highly recommend applying to those too. Yeah, I can show you mine. It's literally right here. So the weird part about applying as a senior undergrad is that you don't know where you're going to grad school yet. So because of that, it's like as you get older, because you can apply either as a senior undergrad, a first or second year grad student. You can only apply once in grad school though. But as you get older, they judge you more because as you get older, you should have more research. I think it should be like later, like no first year grad student is going to be applying unless they're like, I don't know, insane geniuses. But no one I knew applied there immediately when they first started. It's more like a second year. But as a senior undergrad, it's a very good time to apply because they don't expect a lot from you. Because one, you don't even know where you're going to school. So you write about something and then you have to apply. So like if you write about like, say you want to do this project and this, you don't have to do that like at all. Like what they're judging is, are you a good researcher who can come up with a good research plan? Like, especially when you're a senior undergrad, you write it and you don't have an advisor to work with on the application. So like it's all about you, and if you have a good scientific or mathematic voice, and like you can put together a grant. So and it's much shorter than the Fulbright and stuff like that, which I thought was harder. Where is it? Application essays. Personal statement is just like grad school. The research proposal is what you do. And it's super short and cramped. And it's like title, keywords, abstract. This is like what the field is about. If you are interested in the NSF, I highly recommend this website. Yes. He has, I don't know who he is, but he has an awesome website about the NSF. Here, example of successful essays. He has this Google Doc where like people who want it upload their essays. So like you can say like, oh cool, like this is what they expect of a senior undergrad or a second year grad student in this particular field, or you know, like stuff like that. And you can see like they got an honorable mention, they won it, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. So this is super helpful. This is Alex Lang's website. I don't know exactly what he does. Yeah, this is like if you were to win that, the timeline is annoying though. So if you win it, you would have already applied to places. But if you win it, tell everyone. Like tell every single place that you applied to, because you're a free student now. No one has to pay you. Like every advisor would want you, because like they can just, if they've always had 5 students, oh, now they have 6, because like they don't have to pay you. And the school gets money. So not only do you get 34 grand, the school gets 12. Yeah. So if you win that, make sure you email the admission committee and be like, hey, guess what? Well, let me in now, suckers. Yeah. So good question. That's a really good one too. And it's, as a senior, it's much easier to apply to, because like it doesn't matter what you write about. Like you could, like for instance, I wrote about like a pretty specific thing. It could very well have been that I got into a place with no one works on that. Obviously, I didn't apply to places like that because I wanted to work on it. But anyway, it depends on the discipline. It is in general like October, I think. ERFP. Yeah, it's like chemistry does one day, the other does one day. I don't know why I'm doing this. Yeah, so let's see, it's life science, this is 2018, 2020. Let's see, is there some kind of math? It looks like it's the very end, yeah. So it goes life science, yeah, life sciences, computers, psych, and then math is the end. So you get the most amount of time, which is still insane because it's right in the middle of the semester. Yeah, so also be aware of that. Let me go back to, I think 2020 was the one where I cut it off like that. Yes, so these are really, really annoying to apply to because that's right when your semester ends. So you need, like, obviously you don't want to apply to it like then because you're taking finals. So like you need to, like, fall break, Thanksgiving break, like also, this also helps you in terms of grad school. If you can fit it into your schedules, don't take classes. Do like independent studies or something. Like I did independent studies with Nick and Chris, and they knew I was doing this, so they were like, "Okay, you can relax and like actually apply to stuff." And like, so if you can fit it into your schedule, do like an independent study in representation theory instead of like, what was the other? I don't know, differential equations. Like, you know, like don't take the class, take independent study. Yeah, because these are really, these ones are pretty, because at this point, like once you write one, the next are really easy. But yeah, these ones are really hard to apply to, and then it's like pretty smooth sailing for these because it's winter break. Yes, don't use it. Yeah, that's why I said don't use it. The grad cafe is a place where like people from as soon as they apply to for the next 3 months will check it and refresh it and refresh it and refresh it, and all the people will say, "Has anyone heard? Has anyone heard? Has anyone heard?" And then one person will hear it, and everyone will freak out. How did you get an email? Did your portal upload or update? What's going on? Yeah, don't use that. It's not worth it. Yes, they do. It's a there's an academic job one. What is it called? The nest. It's like some bird reference. Yeah, it was awful. Yeah, and it doesn't help you in any way. Yeah. The best thing to do is to find something else to do in that time. Yeah. Other people like it, yeah. It doesn't affect you positively or negatively. It just gives you more to worry about. Yeah.
So when I was applying, I got my final email was accepted the day that the yes or no was due. And like I didn't accept that program because I liked my other program better. But like, is that like
No.
I know that things get a lot more frequent like the very
Yeah.
beginning
Yeah.
deadline because like people are starting to say no and stuff like that. But is that
Yeah, I would have just said no on principle.
yeah.
But no, I don't. I didn't hear about that. Most of them are like mid-March, end of March. That was common though, which is annoying still because that's only 2 weeks and you have to like. In most of the ones that like are the like ideal range is like it's like the end of February, beginning of March, because then if you get those, then you can go, hopefully there's open houses when you guys do it, which would be like, I think the end of March. So if you, but then again, like sometimes like, no, like, maybe someone won't show up for the open house. And like, and then they say like, oh, I accepted somewhere else. And then you get an email like, oh, you're in, so yeah, there's a lot of cycling before that April 15th thing. And you guys can ask like as specific questions as you want. Like, yeah.
I'll say oddly specific question.
Yeah.
Okay, so University of Chicago is a school that everyone's like, you should go to it, it's great, that's a great school. I applied to their ROU and their rejection letter to me was so rude, like so rude. And like, you keep saying like, if, you experience something that like totally turns you off from a school, like, don't go there.
Just don't go. Just don't apply because there are so many other good schools.
Okay.
Like you're gonna apply to at most I think you should apply to like 25 schools. Like that's the absolute max. It's way too much work to do more than that. But like if 20 of those are reaches, like there's so many choices. Like up to like, at least in my case, like I say anything like ranked 1 to like 50 was a reach for me. So like there's so many choices. Like if one of them has a sour taste in your mouth, just pick another one. Yeah.
How was your first year of grad school?
Way too many classes. I would recommend getting some, even if you are a PhD student, just try a little bit of research. Yeah, you are required to do that, but you don't actually have to take classes. Like you can register for research, and that's a class. Really? That sounds miserable.
So like what they did was they capped us at 3 classes per semester if we had some kind of PhD. PhD was usually for us was like 1 day for like grading or something the first year. If you didn't have the PA thing, you were allowed to take 4 classes just to get those credits out of the way. But like I don't recommend taking more than 3.
I took 3 and was going to drop out.
When they said if we have a half-time appointment, which is 20 hours a week, that we're required to 9 total credits.
Okay. Wow, okay. So I would stick to like the lower end.
Yeah, lower.
You took what, 5 credit classes?
Yeah, not a very good idea.
No, it's tough. I mean, taking 3 was hard. If you're required 3 years. I actually learned this the hard way in undergrad because I took, I was doing a psychology course, honors real analysis 2, graduate algebra, independent study, and then like graduate set theory, and I had to drop something during the semester.
Sounds like Garrison. Remember him?
Yeah, I had to drop something so I was going down instead of dropping psychology, which was like the one that I was just interested in.
There was a student when I was at Ursinus who took so many classes that oh my god, there was a student who took so because like at a place like Ursinus, you don't get charged per credit, like you just pay tuition. So he took, I think it was 7. He was taking 7 classes or something. Yeah, and then the college wouldn't let him take like 8 or something. It was like.
His 8 or his 7 or whatever it was my number in his class.
Oh my god.
So he started coming to class.
Audit,
and doing
yeah.
all the work anyway, just to like come to the he made the wrong decision, but then he dropped out.
Yeah.
But it was just hilarious because he was there.
You should have just gave him an A, dropping out half the semester.
I think at some point though,
He was an English and a physics major. Yeah.
he took a proof writing class and wanted to throw in math as a
Yeah.
major.
Yeah. So that's all I prepared. But as I said in the beginning, if you have any questions, just email me, and I'll send this the Zoom recording of this to Chris and Nick. Okay. Right.
Any info you want me to send out?
Cool. Yeah.
So like the field you're interested in, when you apply, did you do research undergrad on it?
Yes. Although like the fancier research, I did research here when I was here as a student, and I got like 2 publications in that, but that wasn't the field I wanted to go to grad school for. But like I said, like all research is good research, so like seeing that, they were like, oh cool, because like I kept doing it. It wasn't like I did it in like sophomore year and just never did it again. It was just that what I did my RU and I was like, I like this. So like I didn't get a publication from a 2-month RU, but it was still cool.
I was wondering how you kind of like phrase things, but you not say your personal or research statement, because you do like research in this area and you're so interested, but like you're like mainly interested in like this.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't like interest change all the time. So I wouldn't worry about having to explain it at all. I would just talk about how cool it was. Like you can like definitely talk about both of them and say like what you accomplished in both of them. But like so I guess that would be like your academic history section or something like that, or research experience. But then like your academic purpose section would be about like what you want to do. So yeah, it's not like you have to explain why you're not doing that anymore. Just explain why you want to do what you don't want to do. Yeah.
Okay, this is a question that I'm not sure that you're necessarily the best person to answer. But, you know, one of the things that I feel like I have to be aware of is how math PhD programs are in terms of representation of women. Do you have any female colleagues who figured out how to navigate figuring that out throughout the research?
Ask if there are clubs, because we have a, what do we call it? It's on my email. Yes,
The
like
Association of Women in Math.
if they have that, good sign. Or just email female grad students. What is her name? Artemis. She's fucking awesome. What do they call it? Yeah, just, women in math, women in physics and astronomy meeting. Yeah, just ask. And also you can like look at, I think ours is pretty buried. You can look for diversity statements. Obviously that's not super visible, so that's not a great thing. But there should be resources about stuff like that. Let's see. It might be here. I thought we had a diversity. I'm on the diversity committee in that. And also ask about that. There's usually a diversity committee, which students can be on. So they get like inside information on stuff like that. Also, I don't know if this exists, maybe that AMS thing you were talking about. Oh, actually grad school shopper shut down, or at least isn't as good as it used to be. But there used to be a way to find like stats. So you could see like how many women, how many like minorities and stuff, like how many like statistics wise like are in the program. But the best way is just to ask grad students. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. In people. Yeah, ours isn't good because if you click on grad students, it's just a bunch of names. Yeah, a lot of places do have pictures. Yep.
Remember, I had a professor I looked him up and I saw his picture, and then the day he walked into class, I was like, oh, he was like, that was 20 years older than he was.
Yeah. So for instance, Princeton has pictures, so you can get an idea there. But yeah, and they probably trick you because I remember I was making fun of myself like earlier in the hallway with you and Nick, like my hair is like 6 feet now, and like I I look much uglier than I did the first day of my PhD. I'm just like there and chipper, like, hey, let's do physics. And that's probably what all these pictures are. They're like their first day of the PhD. Yay! And then like you see them like 5 years later and they're like, oh, I want to die. Yeah, I was making a joke to my friend, like, do I actually give you guys helpful advice about grad school, or do I just show you my ID next to like me? Like, look what it's done to me. Oh God. Woo!